From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Welcome into the 1011 Now streaming studio. I'm Danielle Shenk alongside Sports Director Kevin Sjuts for the End Report Husker Show, brought to you by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. So let's touch on the football news really quick. Dylan Raiola maybe reportedly entering the portal. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it seemed to be trending this way over the past month plus. If you think about the sequence of events right before the Nebraska-Iowa game, as Dylan was out for the season with the broken leg, there was a very ambiguous report from CBS Sports that hinted that Dylan was going to look into going into the transfer portal. There wasn't a whole lot of substance in that report, but it floated the idea. And then a few weeks after that, Dylan Raiola, which is Dylan's brother, who had been committed to Nebraska and the 2026 signing class, he was committed for more than a year. He decommitted. And then following that, Donovan Raiola was fired as Nebraska's offensive line coach. So the dominoes were kind of falling, and there seemed to be just a cloud of suspicion about Dylan's future at Nebraska, not to mention with the leg casted and he's on a scooter. He just wasn't as visible in the community. So there was a lot of doubt that he would be coming back. And today, even though this is not concrete news, it is going off of, I believe there's 2 reports now out there that says Dylan Raiola is going to enter the transfer portal. And I think on a lot of Nebraska fans' minds that shift has already occurred, that he's not going to be back for his junior year.
Yeah, this report here showing from Pete Thamel, someone that tweets a lot about Husker news. Does this mean Latif's the guy now, or are we going to maybe explore the portal a little bit?
That's the great question here. Is Matt Rule and this coaching staff going to ride young and just invest their time and energy into TJ Latif because he will be Nebraska's quarterback for the Las Vegas Bowl on December 31st, and he has started the last couple of games following Raiola's injury? Or will the program go out and seek a quarterback from the transfer portal? And a big part of the conversation over the course of the 2025 season, Danielle, was Matt Rule wanting more money. And there were some changes made with the budget and with the investment of the people that support the program to give Nebraska more of an allowance. And the funds seem to be there. Now how is Nebraska going to approach the money that they have in place? Of course, they are spending to get some new coaches on staff. They also have a pool of money that they can go spend big on a quarterback. And not to mention Dylan Raiola was, from what we understand, making over $3 million to be Nebraska's quarterback. So without that going to Dylan, they do have that, I would assume, available to whoever option B is, if it's not TJ Latif.
Mm-hmm. And are there any rumors that you've heard of where Dylan might be going to next?
No, I think the news still pretty fresh about Dylan exiting. The natural discussion nationally is he's going to go to Texas Tech. That's just because of the comparisons between Dylan Raiola and Patrick Mahomes and their pre-existing relationship. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I think that's just kind of like a fun
ha-ha moment.
Exactly. It's a easy knee-jerk reaction to say that because he tries to mimic Mahomes, he's going to go to where Mahomes played college football. I don't know that that's necessarily true. It might even be negligent of me to try to throw out some schools that would be looking for a new quarterback because, as we've learned over the last couple of years with the transfer portal and just the explosion of NIL and the money allowed to go get a quarterback, there are going to be quarterbacks right now on rosters that are going to leave that might open some eyes. So the free agency of college football is about to begin, and Dylan's just throwing his name in that mix. Not to mention, the door isn't closed for Dylan to come back to Nebraska. I do think that would be a pretty shocking development, but it did happen with Emmett Johnson last year. He entered the portal, and less than a week later, he recommitted to Nebraska.
Yeah, and so with the portal news, when does the portal close officially? Is that around January sometime?
I believe so.
Okay.
The dates always seem to turn. I can look that up real quick.
Okay, yeah. And then I think maybe some things to look out for. Dylan had previously committed to Ohio State, backed out. Did he commit to Oregon and also back out? Or was that, I think, Georgia and backed out to come here? Maybe are those potentially back in the mix for him?
You would anything's in the mix. That's what I'm saying, is because of the wild swings in college football and personnel changes. The portal, by the way, is open from January 2nd through the 26th for college football. So those are your dates that's where they can't say Dylan's officially in the portal, because the portal is not open right now, but it will open on January 2nd. So it's just really hard to predict. Would Ohio State be in play? Sure. Will Georgia be in play? Sure.
Yeah.
His family, they have residency down there, and that's where his brother goes to high school. So that, yes, some dots kind of connect for Dylan to possibly be in play to go to Georgia. But, I mean, and also with the coach, who knows? And also with the coaches moving. And while that is a fun discussion to try to project where Dylan's going to go, it's also a discussion of, if Nebraska is going to hit the portal, who are they going to pursue?
Yeah.
Sam Levitt is a quick name that a lot of people point to. DJ Lagway entered the portal today, and he's going to be a highly coveted quarterback. Brennan Sorsby, who Nebraska played in the season opener, the talented quarterback from Cincinnati, he now posted on social media this morning that he's going to pursue the portal, and he's not going to return to Cincinnati. And that's what there are just so many pretty good quarterbacks that are essentially going out of the free agency market. They're going to try to find a new home, and they're going to try to find a suitor that's going to pay them a lot of money.
Yeah, even just chatting with friends and family. Levitt was one of the names that I threw out because he was originally going to come here during the Frost era and decided to go to ASU instead.
Yeah, and that's what some people will look at, is who has a pre-existing relationship with Nebraska that, when the text message or the phone call hits, it's not going to be completely out of the blue. Not to mention, situations where things come out of the blue, they do actually occur. Look at Jeff Sims. He had no ties to Nebraska and ended up being Nebraska's pursued quarterback, and that was for the 2023 season. I think the biggest takeaway from Dylan Raiola entering the transfer portal is it marks a reset for Matt Rule and this coaching staff as Rule enters year 4 at Nebraska, because Dylan Raiola was the centerpiece of what was being built under Rule at Nebraska. With Dylan leaving, there are a lot of question marks, and some of the momentum that has been building, reaching a bowl game for the first time under Rule in 2024, and then one-upping the win total in the regular season in 2025. There is some momentum there, but it's all been pushed by Dylan Raiola. Now, who's going to be the leader of the team? Who's going to be the focal point of the offense? And that's where I call it a reset, because some of the things that had been pretty stable, or at least you knew were like fundamental tenets of Nebraska football, at the current moment, they're now going to be gone. Who's Nebraska going to build around offensively now? It's a wild question. Emmett Johnson is declaring for the NFL draft. Dylan's not. Ja'Cory Barney returns, but there's
only so much you can do with a wide receiver,
Exactly right. And the wide receiver room is talented. And I even think from a leadership standpoint, because that's where Dylan's growth really came from his freshman year to his junior year, is who is the guy that was always at mat drill, staying late in the football offices, and visible to represent the program. It was Dylan Raiola. You remove him, and now I even struggle to find the answer of who's going to be the face of the program entering the 2026 season.
Yeah, and I mean, you always see quarterbacks in the running for Heisman, similar to how setters should get a little more recognition in volleyball. We'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But is there any other portal news for Nebraska that's kind of stuck out to you, or is this kind of just the biggest thing here so far?
This is the whammy right here, just because it has like a massive impact on the football program from a leadership standpoint, from an offensive standpoint, from what is Nebraska's identity? When people, whether you follow Nebraska football or not, if you're one of the people on the outside, when you thought of Nebraska football, you thought of Dylan Raiola. Now, what do they think of?
Yeah,
that's what's fascinating with where the next move is going to come from this coaching staff in terms of assembling the roster.
Right, and so. this not as much of shocking news to maybe some Husker fans who have been following the news pretty closely, whereas volleyball, that was the bigger shocker to, I think, most people, dropping a heartbreaker in 5 sets to Texas A&M.
Shocker is an understatement. Even waking up this morning, Danielle, I think a lot of Nebraska fans were wondering, did that really happen? And probably a lot of folks reevaluating what their week looks like, because as you enter this final week before Christmas week, it was all going to be centered around the NCAA Volleyball Final Four, was it not?
Yeah.
Whether you're traveling to Kansas City, whether you're staying home, pretty much everybody around here that loves Nebraska volleyball had plans on Thursday night, and that was to watch Nebraska play. And a lot of people probably had plans for the weekend, which was centered around do whatever you need to do on Saturday because Sunday is out. Nebraska is going to play for a national championship.
Yeah, it was going to send you right into the holidays.
And now it is a wide open week, and it's kind of a uneasy feeling if you're passionate about that program. It
was quite the dagger. I couldn't even really watch. I had a bad feeling before the game, knew something wasn't right, and I honestly couldn't even watch the entire thing.
Possibly it's shame on us, for having an inflated sense of what Nebraska was capable of, because I'll be very honest with you. I don't know that I gave too much thought to the scenario in which Nebraska would not be playing in the Final Four because they had been that dominant. Yeah. Nebraska entered Sunday's regional final with only 7 set losses on the entire year, 33-0 overall record. They had just been dominant. And Nebraska had not lost a home match in the NCAA tournament since 2003.
Yeah.
So just given the way the season has played out and given Nebraska's history at home in the NCAA tournament, it was like Sharpie it already. Nebraska's making the Final Four.
Especially after their performance against Kansas. I mean, that was, you're like, wow, this is the team that could win it all. Just the way that they absolutely put everything together, were playing defense so just out of their minds, great. And then a couple days later,
but Texas A&M happened, and to be fair here, Texas A&M played outstanding.
Yeah, they played.
I think that is one of the most well-coached volleyball teams I have ever seen. I thought Jamie Morrison had a masterful scouting report on Nebraska. He knew how to attack Nebraska. And, I just shared that I didn't give it much thought that Nebraska might not make the Final Four. When A&M went on the 10-0 run in set number 1, they didn't blink despite falling behind early. And the Devaney Center was rocking. It was loud, it was energetic, and it was fun. But A&M stayed poised, just kind of settled into the match, and then they took set number 1. And that was the moment, just as a journalist, watching it and having followed this team, I was a little bit, whoa.
Yeah.
This team is going to give them a run for their money. And they continued to just put pressure on Nebraska. And even after losing set number 4, which went 37-35, it was incredible. It was great theater. It was back and forth, edge of your seat, heart-pounding drama, but Nebraska won set 4 on their home floor and was 15 points away from reaching the Final Four. And you thought in that moment, the team that wins that set probably wins the match. Yeah. They have the momentum.
But no.
A&M stayed steady, and that was very impressive.
Yeah, and before the match, there was a little, maybe some smack talk similar to Matt Ulmer saying Big Ten's not tough, but Texas A&M saying they're not scared of Nebraska. You thought it was a little funny watching the first set when Nebraska did come out so strong, and then he's saying that they're not scared of Nebraska, and then they make this giant comeback.
No, they were not scared.
No, and, Nebraska was saying for a while that they want somebody to be able to punch them back, but there was just no moment where they were like, okay, let us lock in and absolutely, play Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah, to go into the volleyball IQ speak of the match, outside of just the general feelings of the way it played out, this is what Texas A&M did that really caught my eye. And I mentioned that Jamie Morrison coached that match beautifully. It seemed like he was a step ahead of everything that was happening. And I think he felt really confident in his game plan, and he felt confident in the way in which he relayed it to his team, and then his team executed it perfectly.
Yeah.
And Number one, they served relentlessly, specifically at Lainey Choboy. Now, Lainey had some dimes. She had some excellent passes, but they just didn't let her breathe. And they continued to go after Lainey. That was in their game plan, and they didn't waver from it. So that was the first thing that they did. Secondly, they smartly knew that Bergen Riley wasn't feeling well, and they made her have to defend them. Mm-hmm. So they went after Bergen when she was right front. They just used her on the block, and then when she was right back, where were they hitting it? At Bergen, as often as they could. So they tried to wear Bergen down. Mm-hmm. And, to play when you're not feeling well, that's tough to begin with. To play a set that goes 37-35, that's extremely difficult. And then you heard Danny even say after the match, looking at Bergen, saying, are you good to go for set 5? That was a part of A&M's plan, is they knew that there was a potential weakness there for Nebraska, and it was go after Bergen Riley. So they served Lainey tough. They were pretty relentless at attacking at Bergen, and then a lot of the discussion following the outcome of the match was about Andy Jackson, the national leader in hitting percentage, who finished with 6 kills and 5 hitting errors. They made it tough on Andy. And the way that A&M, which is a really good blocking team, the way that they were setting up their block, they were taking away some of the swings that Andy Jackson has had success on all season long. Hitting cross court was not going to happen from the start of the match. Mm-hmm. And they forced Andy to hit down the line in set number 1. And one of her first swings went wide while trying to hit down the line. Mm-hmm. And then a little bit later in set number 1, same thing. Andy doesn't have much of a window to hit outside of going down the line. She went wide again. So there were 2 hitting errors in the first set, and that's when it seemed like Andy lost a little bit of confidence.
Yeah.
And she had spoken mid-season about how the non-conference for her just didn't go great because she was in her head too much. Andy admitted that, and I thought it was very revealing and humbling of her to share that midway through the season. But then she just relaxed and started playing volleyball, and that led to her explosion in Big Ten play. But it's almost like A&M used that material and said, ooh, we know that mentally we can try to put some stress on Andy and maybe take her out of the match. And they did.
And he was the coach for USA when some of the Nebraska players were playing, so he knows Andy's
skill set. He has coached Andy on Team USA. He has coached Rebecca Alec on Team USA. So from a volleyball-specific standpoint, those are the 3 things that I saw from A&M that they did really well, and it was the recipe to beating Nebraska on their home floor.
And that's why I was a little hopeful when A&M and Louisville were going at it so hard that Louisville would maybe come out on top, because then Danny would have had the upper hand there with knowing that team inside and out, and hopefully an even easier path to a Final Four. But, pushing Bergen to her limits, not easy when Campbell's injured, out with a pinky for the rest of the season.
Yeah, there were a lot of forces that went against Nebraska this past week, and it's really unfortunate because the season had gone so perfectly up until the week of the NCAA regionals. Nebraska was mostly healthy. Nebraska made quick work of so many opponents along the way to the 33 wins. But then when the stage was set to try to reach the Final Four, there was illness all across the team, most notably the setter, who has to do a lot of running on the court. Sigler's back, tweaked something before the Kansas match and spent a lot of that match on the bench. The situation with Ali Check, where she injures her ankle or leg during pregame warmups. Nebraska was almost done with their warmups, and then that took her out of that match. I mean, what a bizarre situation. It's not like that happened before Nebraska was playing Winthrop, in the non-con. That came before A&M in a match where Nebraska needed its depth. So there were just some things, some forces that went against Nebraska. This isn't excuse making. Right. It's just reality. Mm-hmm. But when the coach talks about it or the players talk about these forces that went against them, it can sound a little bit like we're building in excuses. But if we're just laying out the facts, those were some things that Nebraska had to try to overcome in order to reach the Final Four. And just one too many mounted. And not to mention, it's 15-13 set 5. It's not like Nebraska just got ran off their own floor. They were right there. It's just like every one of those little things was another hurdle that they had to try to overcome.
And they just couldn't do it. I mean, are surprised by any of the decisions that came down to the wire? Like maybe not throwing Andy back in the fifth set, maybe not changing Choboy and Malk at libero.
I'm not. I think I fully support the decision to keep the libero jersey on Choboy, because even if it's Malk with the libero jersey on, they're still serving right at her, and they served at Malk as the defensive specialist. So regardless of who that was, A&M was gonna pressure the passer. As for the Andy Jackson situation, I think that goes beyond physical ability. I will trust the coaching staff that they did what they thought was in the best interest of the team, because none of us can really identify the mental state in which Andy was in.
Yeah.
The coaches do. So I think some of the people that are really going to town on that decision of leaving Andy Jackson on the sideline in set 4 and then in set 5. I understand they're out of subs in set 4, but not putting her back in the match in set 5. I know what she's capable of physically, but I don't know what's going on mentally with Andy Jackson, and if she was in a good mental state to even play with the sprint to 15 points up ahead for Nebraska.
I mean, just a little bit of positive here, though. Manaya stepping up big in a moment like this. I mean, thoughts on that? Her being a freshman, and what else Taraya Sigler has been able to do here this year.
Yeah, there were some freshmen that came up with some really big plays in critical moments. I felt bad for Manaya, though. A lot of people, despite the good stuff she did, she had a few key blocks, she had some massive swings, and she was very aggressive. The stage wasn't too big for her. However, it didn't help that she had to serve. I can't remember her serving all season. I believe that
they did once.
I think the 2 service aces she had in set 4, because Nebraska couldn't sub her out. They were out of subs. Yeah. Manaya had to serve. They were sets 2 and 3 on the season, and they were both service errors. So I felt bad for her that she was in that spot. But I don't think that undoes all the good that she did on the court.
Bright future ahead for her. Okay, we kind of have mentioned the sickness. What have you heard related to that? Maybe chattered about limited interviews after the game. They only had Rebecca and Harper go talk to media along with DBK, but they didn't do like the sideline interviews that kind of normally happen too.
Yeah, that became a pretty big story, and it's because there's one publication that, they reported on it. I was right there in that same area, and honestly, I wasn't surprised by the way that everything played out. Nebraska just had their hearts ripped out, right?
Yeah.
And the NCAA has a 15-minute interview window, and during that 15 minutes, Danny Busboom-Kelly, Harper Murray, and Rebecca Alec went to the podium. Oftentimes, during the same 15 minutes, players are made available in a secondary spot. Oftentimes, it is in a locker room. And in fact, sometimes in that round, reporters have been allowed inside Nebraska's locker room to do interviews. That did not happen yesterday. As we come to find out, one of the reasons that did not happen is because of all of the illness that's been passed around on the team. So that makes sense. That's not to be criticized, right? The secondary area in which interviews could have possibly happened was in a hallway right outside the locker room. And that's exactly where I was standing during this 15-minute window. There were a few players out there, but they were also being consoled by their parents, and they were tearful. And there wasn't really a clear green light of when interviews were to happen. And frankly, I don't know how comfortable I would have felt going up to one of the players that was in that area at that time. Like, I think I would have given them the respect of, I'm going to let you cry on your mother's shoulder for a few minutes before my interview needs to take place.
Yeah.
The timing of it made it a story because the 15 minutes passed and the players were just done kind of grieving and then composing themselves.
Yeah, so tough spot there. Now, who do you think will win? Who do you think's going to, advance through? Were you surprised that Wisconsin beat Texas?
I was.
I was happy.
Big Ten still gets in.
Yeah.
And that's the other wild thing. After the dust settles from Nebraska's loss, I even remember speaking out loud to somebody saying, like, so who's going to the Final Four?
Yeah.
Because your brain.
Yeah, you thought it was an automatic.
Yeah, Nebraska's going to be there, and they're going to be the favorite in Kansas City, especially with all the fans that are going to be down there. But now you have Pitt, who will be playing Texas A&M, So you have that block of A&M against Olivia Babcock, which will be fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the later match, the second national semifinal, will be Wisconsin representing the Big Ten after beating Texas on their home floor on Sunday. And Wisconsin, is going to play Kentucky. Kentucky led by former Nebraska assistant Craig Skinner.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that Creighton didn't put up a bit better fight against Kentucky, but man, we know
Kentucky's really good.
I thought for sure it was going to be us and them in the final, but
my reaction to your question, who do I think is going to win it? I think it's going to be the winner of the semifinal between Wisconsin and Kentucky.
yeah.
Overall, out of the 4 teams left, I don't know. Are there Vegas betting lines on the volleyball Final Four? I'm curious what they would say. I think it'd be Kentucky.
Yeah, you would think.
I think. Wisconsin's hard to study because they didn't have their setter for a good portion of the season. Mm-hmm. They're playing very well right now, though.
Yeah, so is A&M, and Pitt dropping 1 set to Purdue. So, who knows if that maybe reignited anything or showed some weaknesses there for them. But now for the Huskers, got to keep the eyes on the transfer portal. Is there anyone that you're anticipating might enter for volleyball?
I really don't know. And I don't know that you would see any announcements prior to the Final Four happening. I'd be shocked at that because I don't think that's any of the players' timelines right now, even though I would assume Danny Busboom Kelly and her staff will be having conversations with the team over the course of this week because a lot of them have travel plans for the holidays. With this being finals week, and then a lot of folks, I would assume, would want to get to their families for the holidays. So this is probably the time in which the coaches are going to have conversations with the players, and they can start outlining the future for Nebraska volleyball. It's just wild to think that the conversations are about the future in the Final Four.
Is not in it.
Has not happened.
Yeah,
and if you haven't noticed, the prices in Kansas City. You couldn't find a ticket for under $300 for the Final Four. Like that's an all-session ticket. Now you can get them on under $100.
The power of Nebraska volleyball, being in that kind of atmosphere. There's something that I said, I think maybe I mentioned to Mason was, we're in this sort of sweet spot when it comes to volleyball's growth, whereas we're almost lucky that it's not as big as men's basketball and men's football, whereas, Bergen got all these awards. She would be going pro right now if she was men's basketball or football.
Possibly.
And pro is not really at that spot. Here, at least in the U.S., they have opportunities to go overseas and play, but, kind of fortunate in that regard that if they want to stay and not transfer out to a different place, that they'll be staying here. Do you think we'll be going to the portal for a sort of difference maker, or do you think that we're going to kind of settle with who we have and build them up?
They have a pretty good roster right now, and they have one of the top recruiting classes coming in. So if Nebraska goes to the portal, it's for a piece. It's not for a difference maker. I think the difference makers are already here or have already signed to join the team here in January. But it's not out of the realm of possibility to add an alley check, just a piece, somebody who can help. And not to mention, Danny has a pretty interesting network that comes from the ACC, and there might be players that she is connected to that we're not aware of that maybe she wants to bring over for a season or two.
Right. And so one more thing about volleyball. What are your thoughts on the reseating process that's going to be happening in the Bob? Some season ticket holders kind of losing their seats. Got to have a sort of donation threshold.
Yeah, just go to our website and learn all about it. It's pretty complicated. Basically, what your seat has been in previous years, it's not going to be the way it will be in 2026. There is a donation level which allows you to get into the seating draft. The more money you donate, the more money you give, the earlier you get to draft your seat.
And I think Brandon Muting spoke to a season ticket holder over the weekend about how they're a little upset on how this is all going to work. So make sure you check out our website for that one. But let's move on to some good news as women's and men's basketball are moving up in the AP Top 25 after another successful weekend. We'll kind of stick with the women here. They're only moving up 1 spot, though, in the latest poll after a dominant 85-44 win over Illinois State on Sunday. They're now ranked 23rd. Thoughts on that?
The women, 23rd. I mean, they won again this past week.
Yeah.
Illinois State, not too formidable of an opponent, so they're undefeated.
Yeah.
And a game they're off both basketball teams are off until Sunday. So.
Finals and things like that.
Yep.
Huskers held Illinois State to just 2 points in the first period, the fewest ever allowed in the Big Red in an opening quarter, as the Huskers had a 21-2 lead. So some history there for the women's team. We know how great Britt Prince is from last year, but now she's a sophomore. Is there anything that you've noticed when it comes to changes in her play now that she's another year older?
Well, without Natalie Potts and Allison Widener, she's really had to carry the offensive load. And Britt just, I think, the game moves so fast when you're a freshman and you're just kind of learning on the fly, especially when you're the point guard. The confidence has really increased, it appears, with Britt Prince. So, she's playing really well.
And a few players didn't hear a lot about last year, but are putting up some numbers for the Huskers. Amaya Hargrove, Eliza Maupin. Thoughts on some of these younger players kind of getting established here?
I'm sorry, Danielle. We have other breaking news happening right now with 10-11 Sports. So I apologize for being a little bit distracted, but it has been a day. I mentioned this is the first day of Nebraska volleyball and football postseason, and there have just been a number of stories that have broken throughout the day. So
is this
heads are on a swivel. We're not going to talk about this publicly right now until everything is completely firmed.
Confirmed.
But yeah,
these young players getting established. How about that?
You mentioned Nebraska women's basketball. They're playing really well.
Yeah. So what does this undefeated start kind of say for a coach like Amy Williams, who lost Alex Markowski and, Amaya Hargrove and Eliza Maupin kind of stepping up as younger players here?
Well, they've leaned on some of the players that were in the program last year, and they're continuing to develop them. As you mentioned, Amaya Hargrove's having a really good year. They also can shoot the three. Nebraska plays with a lot of pace, and they can shoot it. And of the 11 wins they've had so far, they've scored 80-plus points in every single game. That's never happened in program history. And a lot of that is due to their shooting ability. Callan Hake, Logan Nisley. It's just a bunch of shooters. Maya Hargrove can step out and hit the three. So it's a pretty fun team. Catch them right now.
Yeah.
They're having fun.
Some playmakers out there. And any word on Natalie Potts coming back? Have you heard anything about her?
We have not, no.
Okay. Well, as for the men, they jumped from 23-15 after a huge win over number 15 Illinois. So Husker men had the kind of ending against the Fighting Illini that we were hoping for the volleyball team. How about that? How big is that buzzer beater for Jamarcus Lawrence?
Yeah, that was shocking. That was fun. And when was the last time Nebraska basketball had a big moment like that? A game come down to a last-second shot. There have been big moments. I think about the court storming against Purdue a couple of years ago when Purdue was number one in the country.
Big win against Kansas State. Oklahoma was a big win here, too, this year.
But they provided the moment, right?
Yeah.
Nebraska had some doubters because of the undefeated start. Who have they played? Yeah, they went up to the Sanford Pentagon and won up there against Oklahoma. Yeah, they beat Kansas State, but how good is Kansas State? Illinois is pretty good. And they just won at Illinois on the road at the buzzer. That's good stuff. And then that was on the heels of a 30-point win over Wisconsin. And I think a lot of people are realizing that this Nebraska men's basketball team is for real. They've got some players. It's not like guys junking it up and finding ways to win. No, Rink Mast is an all Big Ten caliber player, and Jamarcus Lawrence can come up in the clutch. And Sam Hoiberg, Sam Hoiberg is good.
Yeah.
He's not just a piece. He was the guy with the ball in his hands when Nebraska had a bucket or an attempt to try to win that game, and he created the space for Lawrence to let the shot fly.
Yeah, and a quick Google search, I think the last time Nebraska men's basketball was ranked as high as 15 was in the 92-93 season, so it has been almost 20 years since this has happened. Now, Price Sanford scored the first 15. Why has he been so successful here this year?
Well, Price Stanford's just on a heater. If you look at what he did against Illinois in the first half, he was catching and shooting, and they just kept feeding him. And he's got a pre-existing relationship with Fred Hoiberg, and I think that the coaching staff was pretty clear about the role he can play and the way that they were going to utilize him in Nebraska's offense. And Price not only understood that and felt comfortable in his role, now he's just being allowed to just go execute.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how Rank coming back has made a big difference. What is it over this time, after he was injured, coming back? What's made him so great exactly?
Rick Mast, his endurance has been really good. people doubted or just wondered about how conditionally he was going to be coming off of an entire lost season and a slow and lengthy rehab process. His conditioning's been really good. He brings a different style of play because he's so good in that mid-range game. He's got the jump hook. He kind of is an old-school international player using the pivot foot and crafty little shots where he can use the window or hook it in. But he can also step out and shoot the three, and we've seen him with a double-double already this season. And he's kind of the guy that everything runs through. And they can even pull him away and run screens off of him because he's got multiple layers to his game.
Right. And so both Creighton and Illinois head coaches said Sam Hoiberg was the difference in their games against Nebraska. So why does he impact this game so profoundly? I mean, he was kind of a piece player last year, and now he's, been a little more developed, someone we rely on a little bit more.
Well, I think that he knows what his dad wants to run offensively. He doesn't turn the ball over much. He's high energy, and he comes up with so many, scrappy plays, whether it's diving for a loose ball, getting an offensive rebound. We've seen him come up with critical plays multiple times this year, and he's just got the heart of a lion, and the coaching staff, trusts him. Mm-hmm. That's what's crazy. A lot of times, whoever has the ball in their hands at the end of a game, that's the guy to go score, right? That's kind of the way basketball is played this day, this day and age. One-on-one, create a bucket, win the game. With Nebraska, it's, okay, you got the ball in your hands, but you don't need the bucket. In fact, we just need you to create, and then you're going to distribute. And in order to, pass the ball with the clock winding down, you have to be very confident that pass is going to get executed. You're not going to turn the ball over. And if you look up and down Nebraska's roster, who does Nebraska's coaching staff trust the most to not turn the ball over? Sam Hoiberg.
Right. One more question here. What's kind of the impact of not having Connor Esigian and Ugnias
Oogie. We just say Oogie.
Okay.
He could come back still at some point this season, but we don't know that it's anytime soon. Not having Connor Esigian, they lost a shooter, and with this team, the way that they shoot it, there are going to be off nights. Some guys are going to go cold, and you just, if Price is cold, can Rink be hot?
Or Frager.
Exactly right. So he just gives you another shooter, a complimentary piece. And he's one of the more likable guys inside Nebraska's locker room. So you lose a little bit from the leadership standpoint. But Nebraska so far is not skipping a beat without Connor Esigian right now.
Yeah, he's doing a little TikTok journey showing the behind the scenes of being a D1 athlete who's injured. Kind of an interesting point of view there from him, but maybe a little reminder for Husker football fans that patience is key, because Hoiberg has been here for a couple of years now, building up this program, and kind of look at where they are.
He is a shining example of, you don't always have to transfer to make a name. Just kind of stick with it. Trust the coach's plan. Keep working hard. Good things are going to happen.
Yeah. Nebraska men and women will be back at PBA on Sunday. Women closing out non-conference play against Cal Baptist at 11 a.m., while the men take on North Dakota at 7 p.m. Any thoughts on those matchups?
I think it's crazy. We're not going to watch Nebraska basketball or wrestling, or volleyball. The week's clean until Sunday. And then you have men's basketball, women's basketball, and wrestling all competing on Sunday.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for watching. For more coverage, you can visit our website and follow us on all our social platforms. And also make sure to download our app on Roku to catch our newscasts, highlights, and special stories regarding the Huskers. From our newsroom to wherever you are, we'll see you on the next stream.
You've been listening to the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch The End Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.